Most parents might try to react to a child's meltdown with logic and reasoning. But in a dysregulated child's brain, your reasoning might seem like a threat. What if your attempt to talk them down is actually the noise that keeps the meltdown alive? As a psychologist, I have witnessed when parents try to talk their child down during a peak meltdown, it can actually spike the child's stress. I'm Dr. Jules, a psychologist specializing in neurodevelopmental diagnoses, and I help families break cycles of behavioral chaos literally every day. Today, we're decoding 5 habits that I always tell parents are accidentally sabotaging their and their child's peace. We're going to move past bad behavior and look at biological safety. I want to show you why your help might inadvertently be harming. And then we're going to talk about the 3-step safety loop to stop the tantrum. Now, I'm informally calling number 1 the talk trap. The tantrum starts. You don't know what to do, so you do what most logical people do. Explain. You explain why they can't have the blue cup. You explain that the blue cup is dirty right now and it has to go into the dishwasher, and so it's not available.
And I need you to be patient and wait because you're such a good boy.
And lo and behold, the tantrum gets worse. We have to remember that children don't develop logical thinking that can tolerate the capacity an adult's logical thinking can tolerate for quite some time. We like to think around the age of 7 or 8. That's when some of that concrete thinking really comes into play. But before then, a lot of the logic and reasoning can further intensify their crash out. Don't assume that your child has the mental hardware for complex reasoning. To them, the voice asking them to consider options or to think through resolution can sound like noise. It isn't help. And while the reasoning is logical, they can't hear the why because their brain might be shouting, "Help me." The otherwise helpful and logical reasoning then becomes a threat, intensifies their pain. Scenario number 2, you are in the midst of a child meltdown and you begin to negotiate. You're pleading and you're begging, "Please stop. What do you need? Didn't I give you this already? Can you please just tell me what it is that's wrong?" This might be something that could be helpful and effective, but more often than not, what I see happening is the reversal of roles. The parent then is looking to the child. What can you do to help me help you? And for a lot of children, that can further intensify dysregulation because then they start to recognize my parent might not know how to help me. It can trigger a feeling of confusion when they're being asked to come up with a solution. It can also trigger a lot of worry that the parent can't handle their intensity. So with the parent asking the child what do they need and what do they need to do, and the child feeling confused because they don't know, it's almost like there isn't a leader in the room. And the child's anxiety actually goes up. The child doesn't need a negotiator. During a tantrum, the child actually needs a captain, almost like somebody to help them weather the storm. This one is more for my neurodivergent kiddos and even teens, but mostly geared towards kids. And I call this the sensory pileup. When a child is dysregulated, a lot of parents will try to hug them or hold them, and it's almost like a hug hurt of some sort. If you have a child that has sensory sensitivities, which is very common in autism and ADHD, for example, this hug that would otherwise calm another child down might actually intensify their overstimulation. Now, this isn't a one size fits all. It's possible that there are children who have sensory sensitivities and they love the opposite. They love the pressure, they love the touching. But more often than not, remember, this is me speaking from my clinical experience working with neurodivergent children and families and parents, the touch can almost feel aversive. The child might not want it, and it can almost feel like rubbing sandpaper on your skin. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is take a step back, silence, and be a shadow. And of course, I work on parents one-on-one to help identify what it is their children, their specific child would need. The next is the triangulation of conflict. When we think about conflict in a home, it is very rare that it stays to the two people involved, especially when there are children in the home. If you are in the midst of a child meltdown and then turn to your spouse and say something along the lines of,
"What are you going to do about this? Why aren't you helping me? Look, they need help. Do something."
you start to pull in your spouse so that they become the receiver of your frustration, your anger. Unconsciously, you might recognize the child can't handle my adult emotions, so I'm going to displace that anger onto someone I believe can. And boom, your partner is triangulated into this meltdown mess. So not only are you creating conflict with someone new, but you're also intensifying the dysregulation within the child, because then they begin to witness conflict while they themselves are dysregulated. And it further reinforces the idea that I'm not safe, I don't have somebody to protect me, and when I become dysregulated, my parents become dysregulated. It can create quite the harmful cycle. And the last one I'm going to talk about is the stoic parent response. This is more common in authoritarian households where a parent expects obedience 100% of the time, which is not realistic, guys. I'm going to tell you, it's not. Children are going to make mistakes, and it's less about the mistakes and more about how we handle them and create healthy patterns. But I don't want to digress. The authoritarian style calls for the parent to demand obedience. And so the child's meltdown becomes a sign of disobedience, when in reality, it might not be that. Now, every circumstance, I work with parents individually. I like to know what is going on, what happened prior. We would determine the function of the behavior to decide if this is true disobedience or not. But in this circumstance, I'm talking about meltdowns that are caused by biological, sensory, less things that are related to disobedience per se. So in those contexts, expecting obedience is not helpful. And when you turn to disciplining the child when they become dysregulated, that creates a tear in the parent-child relationship and can actually start the process of resentful parenting and a resentful child. The child doesn't learn to regulate or doesn't accept co-regulation after time. and it can actually cause dysregulation to happen more frequently. This can look like the parent saying,
"Well, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about."
or
"I will not tolerate that disrespect in my household. You need to be calm immediately."
keep in mind, this is a situation where the dysregulation is not tied to the function of disobedience. So, how do we actually fix this? We're going to use the 3S safety net. Okay, I'm trying to make this fun and easy to remember. 1, scrub the room. Think of the meltdown like a fire. Okay, you have to remove the oxygen, kill the background noise, dim the lights, turn off the TV. We're not doing these things to punish the child. We are doing these things to decrease sensory stimulation. Again, these are strategies that work for most of the kids that I've worked with who have neurodivergent backgrounds. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. We know that dimming the lights can create a calming atmosphere. It can drop the heart rate. It can signal to the body and mind, I can start to wind down and relax. It's a very powerful environmental signal. Number 2, single word wins. Just throw away the paragraphs of logic, okay? We want to focus on survival labels. Sit, water, come. We want to be level and minimize input. That way, the child has less to process while they are calming down. It's also a good way to interact without completely withdrawing. For some of my parents who feel that giving the child space seems punitive, the single word technique can be effective. It's also a form of scaffolding down to their level in a way. When the child's brain's processing speed is near 0, if you give them a sentence, you're asking them to almost run a marathon with a broken leg. By going down to 1 word, it's easier to grasp, easier to process, and it increases the likelihood of compliance and regulation. And that's the ultimate goal here. S number 3, sleep over speech. That's a double S right there. You don't have to process the dysregulation right away. You don't have to talk about what happened right after they stop crying. You don't have to ask for an apology right after they stop crying. What we want is to further the regulation, offer water, rehydrate, offer a blanket, stimulate that body, bring attention to the body, and the child more likely than not will be exhausted. They might want to take a nap depending on the environment they're in. I would encourage that. The state after a meltdown is a state of biological exhaustion. We've felt it as adults. Tragic things that have happened to us, breakups, loss of a job, just horrible circumstances that cause our minds to go offline, and we cry and we yell and we scream. How does your body feel after? And keep in mind, you're an adult. You have experience with these things. Children, not as much. With that being said, if you need the calm after a storm, why wouldn't a child need that? Give them space to de-escalate. Then, when there is calm, find the time to talk about what went wrong and how it can be avoided next time. Preferably a few hours post, maybe even the next day. Keep in mind, a consequence can still follow, but teaching a lesson, that I would suggest sometimes to wait. Talk in the comments below. Which of these 5s do you find that you use? And do you actually find them helpful? Do you think that I'm wrong? And that, hey, processing with my child real time actually helps them? Do you find that you haven't thought about some of these strategies in a certain way before that now feel very clarifying? And what of the 3 S's do you find might actually be helpful in de-escalating your child or even yourself? Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and come back for the next video. See you next time.